Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. I'm he. And here we are at the nudist colony. I just love being naked. But for decency's sake, I'm only showing you my shoulders. They are sexy shoulders, you know. I've been complimented on them for years. I look wonderful in an evening gown. So, yesterday's show was a good one. We had some nice chat, some good folk there. So I hope you guys can jump in. Um, let's see. So
Harris and running mate Minnesota Governor Tim Walz were in Detroit today, showing their U.S. women's national soccer team bring home 2 gold medals in 2004 and 2000. Described in a number of ways. There's talent in terms of like acting potential, the craft of which. Our president spoke for more than an hour, attacked Walz and Harris, not to mention reporters in the room who were asking him questions. And NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben is here to tell us about it. Hey, Danielle.
Hey, Mary Louise.
I want to start with some actual news from this presser, which is that Trump has agreed to presidential debates, 3 of them.
Christian nation, practicing Christians, and essentially they're saying, well, society has declined now, and in their minds it's become immoral and corrupt, and therefore we need to be more explicit about Christianity in the country. So
Christian
they don't beat around the bush. When I talk to these guys, they say, no, we want Christianity to rule America, and we specifically want Christians to rule America.
Right. And
so
the right kind of
most of the folks I talk to, they think only Christians should be in elected office, and that the government needs to explicitly lay out Christian principles that are the underpinnings of any legislation that comes through from now on. So they want theocracy, and that is what they'll tell you too. They're not shy about it.
There are plenty of politicians on both sides of the aisle who identify as Christian or who point to their faith as guiding them.
So I'm going to let the radio play until some people show up and want to talk.
What falls under that umbrella of Christian nationalism, and what's outside of it?
Again, I'm out as far as
it's really important to note that it's perfectly we have a great tradition of religious freedom in our country.
And
we have the right to worship any God or sacred idea or none. And that's one of our sort of founding ideas. But this is a movement that's really about something else. As Heath mentioned, it's more theocratic. And in fact, in many sectors, it's explicitly dominionist. It's the idea that only Christians of a certain type, by the way, should dominate all of the leading features of society, including government, media, law, education, and the like. But it's also important to note
when I hear people talking about Christians,
like a lot of the messaging embraced by the rank and file is really coming from messaging that begins at the top. The movement is leadership driven and organization driven. So it's a leadership movement. Figures like David Barton, a sort of very popular Christian nationalist mythmaker, who put forth that messaging, and that leadership cadre is really calling the shots, not the grassroots. Of course, the grassroots, the rank and file matter. They have to be persuaded to vote for the candidates that this movement favors, and much of the movement spreads that kind of messaging through churches and faith-based media in order to bring these voters to their side. But the rank and file are not the ones sort of coming up with the talking points and setting the agenda. Religious national.
Well, briefly, I wanted to pull a thread that you dropped in there earlier, Catherine. You said Christian.
Okay, so I'll just make a little sidebar here. So they're talking about Christian nationalism and how it's, lining up. And, our First Amendment isn't about free speech. It's that the Congress will make no law to impose a state religion. Everyone has to believe in what they want to as a religion. They can talk about it. They can gather in churches and do their ceremonies, right? And they can also redress to the state their complaints, but they got to do it peacefully, right? No January 6th. And so that's where we're staring straight in the eyes. But when most people, they talk about all of this, but they do not, Gary Allen wrote a book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy, right? And that's a very good book because he basically states that the left and the right are two wings of the same oligarchy, same corporate, same hidden hand, you know. And he was so was I. We were all working for the CFR, with George Quig, who wrote a great book called Hope and Tragedy, because within the construct of the human, it's really bizarre. We go from catastrophe, it's like that swinging pendulum, the pendulum of doom, and to tragedy, to where it's middle of the road, doing okay, to like super, Disneyland, to back to okay, and then back to catastrophe. And so we're seeming to line up not just in our national politics, but in our global, because that bird is not it's not just the eagle of United States. That bird that Gary Allen was talking about, two wings of the same bird, is a planetary, and not only planetary. That's the other thing that people um, don't even talk about, is the folks out in space. Why do we not talk about UFOs? Why do we not really talk about anything? If you go look at a dark journalist, who he has his own, ideological point of view, which is fine, but his focus is on the connection between the deep state and the UFO guys, right? And that nobody really puts those two together. He does quite nicely. Jim Marr did quite nicely. Joseph P. Farrell does quite nicely. Catherine Austin Fitz does quite nicely. Oh, the big guy who talks about, um, the CFR and the Fed and law in general. What's his name? I forget his name. Maxwell, Gordon Maxwell, something Maxwell. Anyway, um, and so there we are. This is all and that swing of the pendulum, right? It doesn't too often come to where everything kind of looks. I can almost see the shadow of that, right? And that's why we're being given so many distractions. The war in the Ukraine, the war, war in Ukraine was like, well, no one's even paying attention until, the Ukrainians go into, um, you know, Russia by 200 miles, right? And basically, the ATACMS gave them the opportunity to do that because it gave them the opportunity to hit certain strategic places where they were going to go in from where they were, and do it very accurately, and then they could move through, right? And they had strike vehicles. They're not using their Abrams; they're using their strike vehicles, and that is an armored personnel carrier with a pretty big gun on the front that can shoot out a lot of lead, right? Um, they're called Bozeman guns, or there's other names for them, but they basically can shoot, a large cell, like, one every 3 seconds. It's like on a belt. Boom, 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 boom. And each of those things has some super duper high power explosives when it hits something. So it can go through pretty much a tank, or take off a tread, or blow up a little pillbox, and then hit it with, and you got a bunch of soldiers around you with some pretty heavy, they're carrying, heavy armor themselves, lighter than just, light weapons, some heavy guns, right? Um, so that's what Ukraine did, and they did it in an amazingly unbelievable way, in that they gave nothing. No one knew that they were going to do this. Everyone was looking at them doing other stuff, and they gathered not just conscripts, but some of their best people, and a number of brigades, like somewhere about 2 to 4,000 people, and they're still kind of pumping people in and they had their resource um, train there, so they're not running out of anything, and they're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and all they're getting is the thing that's slowing them down is that the Russian soldiers that are there are like um, surrendering. And the Ukrainians aren't raping and pillaging and stealing refrigerators. They are helping the Russians there to either go to someplace safe, near, in Ukraine, or sending them on into Russia. And Russia isn't doing anything for their people or their soldiers as of yet. And this is like, I don't know, started in August, early August, first, second, third, fourth, maybe the fifth, and it's been going on, and they just been going straight ahead, and having spindles going off into other places. So, and that connects to this. Cancel. It wants me. I can't listen to what I recorded unless I listen, not just listen, but go onto somebody's stupid thing. Continue tab. Okay.
Of a certain lives on. For many, disco music transcended the dance floors of trendy clubs and became the music of self-expression. But what goes up must come down. Christian nation, practicing Christians, and essentially they're saying, well, society has declined in their minds. It's become immoral and corrupt, and therefore,
so we can talk while this plays. Right? They're talking about
Christianity in the country. So,
and
they don't beat around the bush. When I talk to these guys, they say, no, we want Christianity to rule America, and we specifically want Christians.
So I've been telling you about how I've gotten the 3 churches I go to work together, and service the community, and it's been pretty amazing. And what's happened is these people have gone in and basically
principles that are the underpinnings
got them to drink the Kool-Aid. So I was told in my church, I can't talk anymore. I can go, I can sit there and pray, but I can't talk.
That is what they'll tell you too. They're not shy about it.
Because I'm talking reasonably about all of this stuff to people, and they're like, and then the churches want to stick to a approved theology.
What's outside of it? Well, it's really important to note that it's perfectly. Listen, we have a great tradition of religious freedom in our country. We have the right to worship any god or sacred idea or none, and that's one of our sort of founding ideas. But this is a movement that's really about something else. As
our founding fathers were Masons. That's why they put that in there.
It's explicitly dominionist. It's the idea that only Christians of a certain type, by the way, should dominate all of the leading features of society, including government, media, law, education, and the like. But it's also important to note this movement is, like a lot of the messaging embraced by the rank and file, is really coming from messaging that begins at the top. The movement is leadership driven and organization driven. So it's the leaders of the movement, key figures like David Barton, a sort of very popular Christian nationalist mythmaker, who put forth that messaging, and that leadership cadre.
You can hear this on A1 on public radio.
Of course, the grassroots, the rank and file matter. They have to be persuaded to vote for the candidates that this movement favors, and much of the movement spreads that kind of messaging through churches and faith-based media. In order to big picture, I think it's really important to see that these cultural issues are also going along with these other types of issues, like eliminating the Department of Education, eroding rights for the workforce, the right to overtime pay and worker protections. And then you have this whole attack on what they call woke science. They basically want to dismantle the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which provides the weather data that the National Hurricane Center relies upon for hurricane forecasting. In fact, the journal
I love this. I love it.
Just obtained a number of Project 2025 training videos, which they published with ProPublica. And in the videos, one of the speakers said, if the American people elect a conservative president, his administration will have to eradicate climate change references from absolutely everywhere. So there's a real war on science that suffuses this document as well.
Heath, we should say that
sounds like the 9th century.
The director of the project,
with the Pope saying that no one can read.
Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, who called it ridiculous and abysmal.
Yeah, they'll kill you,
but
Fish. They'll
where
kill
do
you.
You see connections between Project 2025, the Trump campaign, and Republican Ohio Senator and VP pick J.D. Vance?
I mean, there's
I love it.
In
the churches, I don't know if you heard, Fish, that I've been telling stories about organizing my climate change will kill us. Yes, and the 2025 agenda we won't even talk. We won't hear about it on anything. Gigantic hurricanes will wipe out all of Texas, and no one will know.
There's a good chance he would be again.
No one can say the word. Can't say that word. I wrote a story
so these guys are
10 years ago
on the sidelines and
about this,
and making plans right now. If Trump wins, and they're ready to go on day one. If he does win, election. J.D. Vance just blurbed a book that's suffused with Christian nationalist ideas by Jack Posobiec, who's this kind of far-right influencer who also was involved in the Pizzagate hoax, I should say conspiracy theory. If anybody
well, they jumped it 5 years up, 2025. We're not worrying about 2030 anymore. 2025, they're going to hit the ground.
All over the place, and I think that's
whatever those guys are called. Starts with an H.
Because there's so many people.
The guys who gave us corporations being people too, that they can give us much money.
They're much less and less
heritage funds,
right?
The guys who picked all the Supreme Court guys.
Talking about what could happen in the election.
They have put up
this
thing, this paper
I want to talk about
2025 because
between church and state.
No one thought
the line between the two and what's happening right now.
Donnie was going to win, but he
did. Fighting to keep a new state law requiring schools to display the Ten Commandments. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrell is asking the U.S. District Court to dismiss a lawsuit that was brought by families.
As I was saying, this ain't one-sided.
Catherine,
these two
how
sides
are some of these ideas affecting
have
public
one
education?
coach, one corporate coach.
Religious right has a long-standing
and Fish, you see this yourself in your little perch. You see this. You see how the worldview before 2001 was one thing, and then it was something else. And before Bill Clinton, it was something else, and then it was something else. And before George H. It was something, and then it was something else, and then Ronald Reagan was something, and then something. And you can track it by looking at how commerce was traded.
Strategy for this foreign public education.
When Bill Clinton brought in NAFTA, he destroyed all of what North America, Canada, he made Canada, United States, and Mexico one country.
Or,
one
clubs or LifeWise programs,
thus
and these other programs that introduce
the focus away from America, taking all of the manufacturing out of the United States.
By
and sending it to groups, it's still three groups: America, corporates, Canadian corporates, and
charters that have an explicitly
Mexican corporates. And so everything got split up into three parts. Each of those parts did their own thing, and then sent the other manufacturing to China.
So in the last couple of years, we've seen these little
it was so broken up. It was like Humpty Dumpty. Couldn't put the egg back together again, right?
And they might look
and so then we had 9/11 that then gave us never-ending wars, which is a total distraction and made money for a lot of other people.
Moms for America,
and then we had
leadership.
Donald Trump, he came in and he
And what
wasn't
they
supposed
do,
to win,
they
but
have
he
the
did.
intended effect of
But it didn't
reducing
matter
faith
who
in
won
public education,
because
make parents wonder if their second grade
and
math
in
teachers
reality,
teaching, what's
her
gender
name?
ideology or critical race theory, which is
Hillary.
not
She
happening.
was happy where she was. She had
And
so
that
much
softens the
power,
ground for
nobody
diverting
had to
money
talk to her.
away
You know,
from
she could
public
just do
schools
her
and instead of
thing,
religious
of the
schools.
Wicked Witch of
We're
the
talking
West,
Catherine
and
Stewart, author
no
of
one
Power
even
Worshippers
noticed.
Inside
Right?
the
So
Dangerous Rise of Religious
she
Nationalism,
took that
and
job
Pease Drusen, the
as
host of
she
Extremely
could be the first
American. We got this email
woman
from
running
Fred
for
about religion
president,
in
right?
schools. This practice
And
violates the rights of non-Christian students who don't believe in the commandments or other Judeo-Christian ideas, unless, of
and
course,
because
other non-Christian
she
beliefs are
was
also
by
being
such
taught,
a
which is
razor
never going
blade.
to happen.
If she
Thank you
just
for your podcast.
did
You
and went to a
spoke
few more
Emily
states and
Page
really,
Dye. She's a former student at a fundamentalist school
but she
that was
didn't like
founded by a
talking to the
Christian
common
nationalist,
people. You know, they
and she
were
was sexually
stupid
assaulted
in
by
the
a
wrong
teacher there and
basket. You know?
talked about the power of speaking out now.
I think there's probably nothing scarier that they have downtrodden and they've abused and they've taken away their voices and have told them that they must submit and obey.
That's what this is. They're going to get rid of the 19th fish. They're going to get rid of the 19th Amendment. You're not even going to be able to vote anymore. This is like Handmaid's Tale. Fish, did you ever read Handmaid's Tale?
After you asked at the 19th
So
Amendment,
there's four of you
was
there. Come
a
on,
mistake.
jump in this conversation.
I think so. I really do. The 19th Amendment was the one that guaranteed women the right to vote in America. It's pretty unpopular among Christian nationalists I spoke with. That doesn't mean that women or children don't get a vote. It means that they are heard and represented
By their
and
husband.
vote, but through the father, husband.
And what we hear in both of those clips
Oh, that's going to work great.
through line
Hey,
about
Fish, all right.
patriarchy, which
Which
is a
one
key
of you are
tenet
going to be the
of
husband?
Christian
You or your
nationalism.
sweetie?
In your reporting, how did you see that influencing the view of politics?
I love
think
it.
in
I
some
love
ways
it.
It's the most important
Because
thing
I've been
to
talking about
understand
this stuff
movement,
for
because I
50
didn't
years.
fully understand
I've
its
been the
importance
guy
before I
out in the
dove into this
wilderness.
project.
Yeah, I've been like
And the idea
what's
of
his name?
patriarchy
John the Baptist.
is the foundational idea of Christian nationalism. They see a hierarchy with men being leaders and women being submissive, and they see any deviation from that as sort of moral decay and the way society.
I mean, this
declines.
country has been in moral
So,
decay
word control
since its
weapon sounds
existence.
extreme.
I mean,
That
wouldn't you
basically
consider
women shouldn't
slavery
have a
as moral
guaranteed right to
decay?
vote,
Wouldn't you
but it is in
consider
Christian nationalist circles extremely
treating
mainstream.
your wife
Almost
like
everybody
chattel,
I
moral
spoke to,
decay?
almost everyone
Wouldn't
here
you
in the
think
movement I spoke to, and I spoke
killing
to
off a
lots,
whole indigenous
believe that
species,
most women should
100
not
million
be able to
people,
vote.
moral
There's a few
decay?
exceptions, but
Oh, what
basically,
was the other
they're ready
moral
to
decays? You know,
disenfranchise
wiping
50%
out,
of
like when Henry
America.
Hudson went up to Hudson.
And
You
I
should
think
read
that's
that.
something
You can go online
that
and
is very
all
telling
these guys who were the
about their strategy.
first guys from Europe to
Because,
look at
when
things,
we're talking
we
about
like
their ideas,
Christopher
and we're
Columbus.
hearing from your
Why they got
listeners,
the job? They
and
weren't
your
great
listeners
seamen
are
or
horrified. And I
visionaries.
think
No,
it's a good
what they could
reminder
do was
that
write
these ideas are
descriptively.
broadly
They
unpopular.
were like a human
And while
video
these guys
camera.
might not say that
So
out loud,
go read
Christian
Henry
nationalist
Hudson's
leaders,
description
they are smart, and
of
they know
going
that
up the
their
Hudson for the
ideas
first time,
are
right?
not
The sailboat.
winners at the
And he was
ballot box.
blown away because
But if you start
the
to
Iroquois Nation,
disenfranchise
which was a
people who
nation,
might vote
right,
against
made
you,
up of many
like
other
women, it's
tribal,
obviously the
Mohawk,
biggest voting bloc. But
Seneca,
then
the
you start to
Onondaga,
disenfranchise
Iroquois,
maybe folks who
they all
don't
were a
agree with your
nation.
beliefs.
And so
Then
the
your ideas
forests,
don't
they didn't chop
need
down
that
the trees
popular
and plow the
to-
dirt up. No,
to carry
they
the day.
planted their
So if
crops
you stack the deck like
that
that,
grew very well
it's a
in the
very
forest
different
that went along with this tree and that tree and this
the
bush and
biggest
that.
vote bloc, obviously,
And-
that they're targeting
And when
is
Henry
is
Hudson
women.
went along, you would see
Counter briefly
total
how the
groves
Christian nationalists
of
view
apples and
abortion
pears
rights,
and
IVF, and other
fruit
reproductive
and
issues.
vegetables growing just amongst everything.
First, I
And
want
he
to
got
say
off
you
and he
can't
couldn't
take
believe
away
he
the
thought
right to
he had
abortion
found
without
the Garden
risking
of Eden
the
because he
lives
saw
and
this
health
edible
of all,
food.
who
But it was
become
food
pregnant.
that
You know,
the
given as
indigenous
many as
people
1
had
in 4
planted there to
pregnancies
go
end in
along.
miscarriage,
So they didn't need
and
insecticides or
pregnancy carries
you
with it
know,
all those other potentially
fertilizers.
life-threatening conditions. Complications are incredibly common. We're really seeing the devastating consequences of this in state and healthcare settings where maternity care is limited by religious ideology instead of best practices. But the fact is that the movement really wants to use the power of government to establish total control over the reproductive lives of all Americans and take away the most impactful decisions from American women and families. And second, it really thrives on culture war. So it's going to keep pushing these new issues, even after it achieves any one objective, in order to promote division along new lines. So the attack on IVF is really just one piece of a much larger pie of controlling people's rights. And it should frankly obliterate any illusion that they're going to stop with abortion. It doesn't stop with bans on some forms of birth control that they choose to characterize as abortion. And thank you so much, by the way, for Heath for answering the previous question. I really think that the control of all Americans, but in particular American women, is vital to this movement. It really doesn't end until they get total dominion, where their explicit doctrine is that they and they alone should control every aspect of our government and society.
Well, I want to
get ready for it, kids. It's coming on one fashion or another.
Says, what are the more traditional religious groups doing to try to counter this movement? And with the Bethesda emails, why aren't prominent faith and business leaders coming out against Christian nationalism? And briefly, Catherine, you said there is pushback against this movement, but is it happening strongly and loudly?
It's happening. It's, I think for a long time, people didn't really want to face what the religious right was all about. They cast themselves in earlier eras just wanting to.
Yeah, I went into those churches trying to, swing towards their better self, right? All I talked about was God's unconditional love and Jesus'
anti-democratic
unconditional forgiveness. And that we're morons. We really can't do much about it except be our best.
They're not hiding.
And this Sunday, I was told I'm not allowed to say anything.
Are we going to turn our country over to
and so when they were having the fellowship, which I couldn't talk, they were saying just the most amazing things, which I couldn't respond to.
Now, even though there's lots more to talk about it, so we may very
and
well
this one woman made a couple of comments, and everybody who was, talking fellowship were men. And this one woman who was obviously a brand iron, iron brand.
Money Lies in God Inside the Movement to Destroy American Democracy will be out in February of 2025. And Keith Druzin is the host and creator of the podcast Extremely American, which is produced by Boise State Public Radio and distributed by NPR. Thanks to you both. Today's White, thanks for listening.
Opportunity to say, what does the future look like? We're relying more and more on single ticket buyers who are younger, who are making decisions based on the specific event rather than the idea of opera as a part of their lives.
Oh, it's the opera show. Oh, yes. Which was a very good show, but not about what we're talking about.
And so lives on. For many, disco music transcended the dance floors of trendy clubs and became the music of self-expression. But what goes up and down? Our summer music series continues as we revisit our discussion about the highs and lows of the disco era and its lasting impact on popular culture. That's next time on 1A.
For love.
Support for WETS comes from Spice World International.
So this is my public radio station. I'm giving them a shout out. They are really great. I'm out here in the middle of nothing. We got 2 radio stations. These guys, and off the hook Bible guy, who's like on acid all the time.
He's written a new book called White Robes and Broken Badges. About his time as a member, what he learned about the spread of hate.
And we had a brother on 09, and he was talking about a theologian. And I looked him up, and he's really...
He talks with us about the personal.
But I like him because he reads everything in Greek. So he's coming from a place like I always forget. My mind won't deal with like the Bible, where everything's a lake of fire and
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh.
Let's hear the news.
1 week left until the Democratic Party convention kicks off in Chicago. Until then, Vice President Kamala Harris is going to focus this week on rolling out her economic policy vision, something the Democratic nominee has been teasing out on the campaign trail. NPR's Deepa Shivaram is covering the Harris campaign.
Harris told rally-goers in Las Vegas over the weekend that her focus on the economy will be about lowering costs. Even though inflation has gone down, many Americans remain frustrated by prices on things like groceries. Harris also mentioned capping rent increases and lowering the cost of prescription drugs. All
Nixon tried that. Didn't work out too good.
President Biden in the White House. But she also mentioned a new point. She would work with Congress to end taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers, something former President Trump supports as well. Harris told reporters she'll release her economic plans midweek. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News, San Francisco.
See, she's doing the same thing Biden did, hiding in the basically.
campaign is
He
accusing
hasn't
Iran
had
of
a
hacking
real
its
news
internal
conference at
documents and
all.
communications, though has provided no specific evidence. Last Friday, Microsoft reported an Iran intelligence-backed group breached the account of a former high-ranking
None of this news
presidential
means
campaign advisor
squat.
without specifying Trump.
When they tell,
Over the weekend,
in the end,
Politico reported the
they'll
documents were
mention
emailed
something
from
about
an
the stock
anonymous
market,
account and
but they
confirmed the
don't. They just
authenticity
said
of
it
the
went up
internal
by
campaign
10
documents.
points. It went
Meanwhile,
down by
Trump
3
supporters
points.
are expected to
They
hear more
don't
from
tell
their
you
2024
what
presidential
the
hopeful
end
tonight
number,
on X.
what the number
Although
is.
Elon
You know,
Musk, the owner of the
they're
social
like
media platform
the
formerly
Dow.
known
They
as
don't say
Twitter,
it's at
has posted online an
23,000.
interview
No,
with
or
Trump
it's
will
at
take place at 8
40,000.
p.m.
No,
Eastern.
it's the same. Went up by
Ukrainian troops
3
and
or
Russian
down
reinforcements
by
are gearing
20.
up for what looks like a major confrontation in the villages and towns of western Russia. Russian forces are preparing a counterattack after the country they invaded more than 2 years ago, Ukraine, carried out a surprise offensive last week, crossing the border onto Russian territory. It's NPR's Greg Myrie.
The question at this point is really, what is Ukraine's goal here? They've shocked the Russians. They've boosted Ukrainian morale. They've turned the momentum in their favor for now. But toward what end? President Volodymyr Zelensky says the operation is intended to, quote, push the war into the aggressor's territory, and it's certainly done that. But we're not getting details, just bits and pieces.
NPR's Greg Myrie reporting. The U.S. Secretary of Defense is
So the
ordering a
Russians
guided
don't
missile
have it
submarine to the
together.
Middle East.
They're always discombobulated. They have lots of people. They have 180 million people. They have like 90 million guys they can grab. But it's hard to grab them. Right?
You're listening to NPR News.
So they're having,
the National Weather Service is
and
monitoring
they're
what
not
could
training
soon be
them, and they're
another
not giving them
tropical storm in the
equipment,
Atlantic.
and
Storm named Ernesto is
that's
rapidly
why
moving
everyone, the
westward toward
Ukrainians,
US
the
Virgin
thing that's slowing the
Islands
Ukrainians
and Puerto
down is that
Rico.
the Russians are surrendering in
still
mass.
recovering from the remnants of hurricane and then tropical storm Debbie. The Summer Olympic Games have come to a glittering close in Paris. The opening ceremonies were closely guarded, with the Olympic athletes voting.
The French wouldn't let any of the Muslims wear jihad. And the girl who, the last gold medal that was given out, the girl stepped up on the thing with the jihad.
May not have the Eiffel Tower, but it does have the Hollywood sign. Casey Wasserman also
we're going to have the Summer Olympics in L.A. Oh, isn't that going to be fun? All those homeless people, the French rounded up 40,000 homeless people and bust them 40 miles out the way and just left them in the woods, right? So, the rich people wouldn't see them, right?
Mayor Karen Bass said the LA Games will be the no-car Olympics. She said crowds going to venues to see events will have to use public transportation.
There is no public transportation in L.A. They're not going to be building it in 4 years.
0.5% or 92 points. The S&P's risen 15, and the Dow is down 39 points. It's
See?
NPR News.
What did it say? Did it say where the Dow is? No, that's the important information. It just said it was down 39.
Is partnering with adoptaclassroom.org to provide funding to high-need schools in local communities for Subaru loves learning.
Oh, Subaru loves learning. Come on, guys. You know, let Fish say everything. What did you say?
Partly cloudy and light winds for tonight.
Let
Low of 59.
the kids choose their own gender. I would say so.
A high of 85.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Tanya Mosley. My guest today, Joe Moore, spent nearly 10 years of his life living a double life as a member of the Ku Klux Klan. He did it as an informant for the FBI, thwarting an assassination attempt in 2007 on then presidential candidate Barack Obama and foiling 2 murder plots. In his new book, White Robes and Broken Badges, Moore gives a first-hand account of his experiences infiltrating the KKK's invisible empire and the rise in white supremacy ideology, specifically within law enforcement in Florida where he lived. During his time as an informant, Moore rose through the ranks, becoming friends with powerful members. He wore wires to record their plans, capturing discussions of a murder plot that would lead to the convictions of 3 Klansmen. Moore says his experiences gave him a clear view of how the seeds of hate sown by the KKK led to Charlottesville, January 6th, and the growing threat of white supremacist extremist groups as we head towards the presidential election. Fearing for his life as well as his wife and children, Joe Moore now lives under a new name in an undisclosed location. Joe Moore, welcome to Fresh Air.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
You were living in rural North Florida, near Gainesville in 2007, when the FBI tapped you to become what they called a confidential human source. Now, this is highly unusual because you weren't affiliated with the KKK or the FBI at the time. So how did they find you?
The FBI became interested in me when I went to them with regards
I'm going
to
to skip a bit.
my brother-in-law had gotten in trouble. And voice words in different clips. We hear the word eradicate a lot, and then we hear eradicate in the context.
He's okay. He's very not
Christian nation, practicing Christians, and essentially the
graphic, constant, and the difference. He's okay. He's
lives on. For many, disco music transcended the dance.
Bonnie Mosley, and this is Fresh Air. Really think of population control, don't you? I think about the people who don't want you to have children because of the impact on the environment.
This is the 2025.
This court decision, the latest in a string of court victories for Rockwood, is a much needed reminder.
You have law enforcement that is there to help stop the plot, and you gathered this information about this plot against Williams.
Short answer, yes. But with the fact that the plan was able to discover a lot of the information about us, and though we had identity changes, location changes, what I realized was that we can no longer hide in the dark.
This is the guy. He's talking about himself.
With all the resources they have, with all the people that are willing to share favors with them, they'll find us. So I decided that I need to come out for 2 reasons. One, the truth needs to get out. And two, if we're in the open and a lot of people are watching, that means they have to come out into the open where a lot of people are watching to sort of conduct some sort of violence. So my wife and I sat down and discussed it multiple times, and we came to the agreement that the best place for us to hide is out in the sun.
Do you think your time being an informant for the FBI, collecting all of this information, you did thwart several murder attempts? Do you feel like it was worth it?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. With what I learned, what I uncovered, what I was able to do for the FBI, the truth was so hidden from the public. It wasn't a matter of the KKK necessarily becoming inferior people. I mean, there's been that to some degree. The bigger issue was the KKK had become more sneaky, more involved in tradecraft, involved in how to be effective.
Where do they get that from? The Nazis.
Joe Moore, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Tanya. It was my pleasure.
Writer Joe Moore. His book is called White Robes and Broken Badges, Infiltrating the KKK and Exposing the Evil Among Us. On tomorrow's show, growing up in a devout Rastafari family in Jamaica, we'll talk with poet author of the memoir, How to Save Babylon.
Hey,
the
Babylon.
reggae singer ruled the home, and everyone who wasn't Rasta was considered heathen.
Rastaman, Rasta.
Was when she cut off her dreadlocks. I hope you highlights of our interviews. Follow us on Instagram at NPR Fresh Air. Fresh Air's executive producer is Danny Miller. Our technical director and engineer is Audrey Bentham. Our interviews and reviews produced and edited by Phyllis Myers, Anne-Marie Baldonado, Sam Brigger, Lauren Krenzel, Teresa Madden, Monique Nazareth, Leah Challoner, Susan Nakundi, and Joel Lafrum. Our digital media producers are Molly C.B. Nesmer and Sabrina Seward. Roberta Shoroff directs the show.
The attack happened during the Fajr prayer, which is a dual prayer that is almost at 5 a.m. And after this prayer, most of the...
From New York, this is Democracy Now!
Listen to this. Kids.
Tens of thousands of already displaced Palestinians are forced to flee the southern city of Khan Yunis in Gaza after Israel orders yet another evacuation. This comes a day after over 100 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school and mosque in one of the deadliest single attacks since October. We'll go to Gaza for the latest. Then inside Project 2025 secret training videos.
A victory is everywhere. And if the American people elect a conservative president, his administration will have to eradicate climate change references from absolutely everywhere.
Publishes videos created for Project 2025 that feature many former Trump officials laying out a far-right policy agenda if he's reelected. We'll speak with the reporter who broke the story.
So what do you think about that? How you guys for Johnny or what's her name?
In Paris. We'll look at France banning
Doesn't matter.
from wearing the hijab.
What do you think what's going on in the world?
Being subject to false claims of being male or transgender.
Ooh.
systematically displacing unhoused people in Paris. And as the Paralympics is set to start later this month, we'll speak with a Palestinian Paralympian from Gaza. He's been disabled since he was shot by an Israeli soldier in Gaza City in 2001. All that and more coming up.
I mean, the Russians have been juicing girls to win,
I'm Amy Goodman. Officials in Gaza say more than 100 people were killed Saturday in an Israeli attack on a school and mosque, where thousands of displaced Palestinians had sought shelter. The attack on the El Tabin school in Gaza City was one of the deadliest individual attacks since Israel's war on Gaza began over 10 months ago. Rescue workers said they did not find a single full body among the dead, just body parts often destroyed beyond recognition. Survivors said Israel attacked the school during morning prayers.
Now, when we make a bomb, it really works.
People were praying the dawn prayer. They struck 3 missiles and one didn't explode. It's on the rooftop. The remains of people, children, and women,
These
the
weapons
elderly
were
were
American.
What did they do?
We
Well,
are
these remains everywhere.
part
They're from the
of
Sudanese
this
people who fled to Europe.
genocide. It's cool.
Without a warning or anything, what can I say? I'm speechless. More than 100 were killed. There are still bodies under the rubble even now. Children are missing and some were injured. What can I say?
Israel claimed Hamas was using the school as a command center. CNN's confirmed a U.S.-made GBU-39 small-diameter bomb was used in the Israeli strike on the school. The attack came just 2 days after the Biden administration notified Congress it's preparing to provide Israel with an additional $3.5 billion to spend on U.S. weapons and military equipment. Congress had approved the money as part of a $14 billion package for Israel in April. Zateo reports part of the new U.S. package includes a direct sale of 6,500 joint direct action munitions to Israel. In related news, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has ordered a guided missile submarine to head to the Middle East and for a strike group of fighter jets and Navy warships to sail more quickly to the region as Israel's bracing for possible retaliatory strikes from Iran and Hezbollah after Israel assassinated Iran.
We need some thumbs up. Yes, we do.
On Friday, Israel continued its assassination campaign by killing a Hamas commander in the Lebanese city of Sidon. Meanwhile, the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt have called on Israel and Hamas to resume ceasefire talks on Thursday in Cairo. Hamas responded by saying it supports the ceasefire proposal put
Why
forward
do we
by
need to
President
go back
Biden
to the
rather than
table when
any
we
reply.
already have an agreement that we
Democratic
agreed on?
presidential
Let's just
nominee
do it.
Kamala Harris and her running mate Minnesota Governor Tim Walz spoke before a crowd of over 15,000 in Arizona Friday in their largest rally to date. During Harris's speech, a group of protesters began chanting, "Free, free Palestine." The vice president paused to respond.
And let me just say this on topic of what I think I'm hearing over there. Let me just speak to that for a moment, and then I'm going to get back to the business at hand. So let me say, I have been clear. Now is the time to get a ceasefire deal and get a hostage.
Harris's response to the pro-Palestinian protesters in Arizona marked a notable shift in tone from how she reacted to protesters in Michigan.
If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
In other campaign news, Donald Trump has falsely accused Kamala Harris of using artificial intelligence to fabricate photos showing large crowds at her rallies. Last week, Harris spoke in front of 15,000 supporters at an airport hangar in Detroit, but Trump also claimed the massive crowd didn't actually exist, despite extensive photographic and video evidence. Trump wrote, quote, "There was nobody at the plane," and that the massive crowd, quote, "didn't exist." This comes as numerous reports emerge that Trump has been shocked by the early strength of Harris's campaign, as new polls shows her leading in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. The New York Times reports the former president has repeatedly called Harris a bitch in private. Russia's ordered residents in parts of the Belgorod region to evacuate as Ukraine expands its attacks inside Russian territory. Thousands of Ukrainian troops are now pushing into both the Kursk and Belgorod regions of Russia. A surprise offensive that began 6 days ago. Meanwhile, a Russian missile hit a supermarket in eastern Ukraine Friday, killing at least 14 people and injuring 43 others. In other news from the region, Ukraine and Russia are blaming each other after a major fire broke out Sunday at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which has been occupied by Russian forces for 2 years. Russia accused Ukraine of shelling the plant, while Ukraine blamed Russia for starting the fire, which occurred in the plant's cooling towers. In Bangladesh, interim leader Mohammed Yunus has appealed for unity amidst ongoing turmoil and religious tensions as Bangladesh transitions to a new government after the student-led ouster of longtime Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Yunus, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, met with and embraced the weeping mother of Abu Saeed, the first student to have been killed in the unrest last month. On Saturday, Bangladesh's Chief Justice and Central Bank of Governor resigned as protesters encircled the Supreme Court. Students are now focused on unseating officials they say abetted Sheikh Hasina's repressive rule. She's fled to India. The Biden administration's decided to resume sending offensive arms to Saudi Arabia, lifting a ban that had been in place since 2021. The U.S. had halted offensive arms sales 3 years ago amidst public outcry over Saudi Arabia's role in the devastating war in Yemen.
No.
U.S.-led
Our
peace talks between
role
warring parties in
in the
Sudan are set to proceed
devastating
in Geneva
attack
this
in
week,
Yemen.
even as Sudanese officials say they have not yet agreed to send a delegation. Sudan says the U.S. failed to ensure the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, first commit to respecting an existing agreement, the Jeddah Declaration. Sudan also objects to including the United Arab Emirates as an observer in negotiations, as they accuse the UAE of supporting the RSF. This comes amidst a spiraling humanitarian disaster in Sudan, where UN's declared in North Darfur camp and ongoing heavy flooding has led to even more displacement and deaths. In the Philippines, the independent news website Rappler has won an 8-year-long legal battle and will continue its operations after a court voided a shutdown order issued under former President Rodrigo Duterte. Rappler and its Nobel Peace Prize winning co-founder Maria Ressa were consistently persecuted by Duterte for their critical coverage of his authoritarian rule and his deadly war on drugs. Maria Ressa spoke after the court ruling.
This court decision, the latest in a string of court victories for Rappler, is a much-needed reminder that the mission of journalism can thrive, even in the line of fire, to speak truth to power, to hold the line, to build a better world.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting the Biden administration has been pushing to arrange for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to leave office in exchange for amnesty for him and other top Venezuelan officials. The report comes 2 weeks after Venezuela held a contested election where both Maduro and the opposition have claimed victory. Peru has passed a bill that bars the prosecution of crimes against humanity committed before 2002. It's signed into law by President Dino Boluarte. It could benefit convicted former President Alberto Fujimori and hundreds of others who carried out crimes during Peru's internal conflict from 1980 to 2000. The UN slammed the legislation, saying it, quote, risks endangering the rights to truth, justice, reparations, and guarantees of non-recurrence for
Especially
thousands
when
of
we
victims
paid
of grave
for it.
violations in Peru.
We put Fujimori in
Brazil,
power.
authorities are investigating after a plane crash in Sao Paulo killed all 62 people on board. Among the dead were 8 doctors who were headed to an oncology conference. Another victim was a lawyer who represented clients in cases against airlines.
I think it's more the case of,
And a
the
federal
guy
appeals
working
court
on the
extended a
flat
block
tire
on
and
the
he puts
Biden
it back on,
administration's student debt
and he
relief plan known as
loses
SAVE, which
6
lowers
of the
monthly
7 lug
payments for
nuts, so he only
millions and
puts one on. I
accelerates
think
debt
that's
cancellation for
something
some
like that.
borrowers who had taken out smaller loans. Before it was put on hold, the SAVE program had already canceled $5.5 billion for over 400,000 borrowers.
Ooh.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israeli attacks in Gaza have killed 142 Palestinians in the last 48 hours, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. The official death toll now stands at just under 40,000.
Bibi says, give him more stuff, we'll get it done faster.
However, the true number of dead is likely far higher, with many thousands of dead unaccounted for. Figures from the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics show Israeli forces have killed 1.8% of the Gaza Strip's population since October.
Well, they want 100%.
of the victims
At
under
this
the age
rate,
of 30.
they're going to be having to have this war at least.
Single attacks only on
Well,
Saturday
they can
morning,
start building
Israel
condos
bombed
there.
The Al-Tabayin school in Gaza City, where thousands
They
of
have nuclear
Palestinians sought
weapons.
shelter.
They can start
Officials in
cleaning
Gaza say
this
over
up
100
real quick.
Palestinians were killed in the attack, many of them while they were praying at a mosque inside the
They
school.
just drop
Most of
some
the dead were
leaflets and say, go to
dismembered or
this place
disfigured
and
beyond recognition.
we won't
According to
attack
Human
you.
Rights doctors
Honest,
who collected body
actually,
parts and are
there's
handing
some food
over
there waiting
plastic
for you
bags
and
filled with 70
chocolate milk.
kilos of human remains to family members of those killed whose bodies cannot be identified.
Oops.
Meanwhile, CNN has confirmed a U.S.-made GBU-39 small-diameter bomb was used in the strike.
Nasty one.
It was the latest attack in what the
And we
United
just
Nations Human
gave
Rights
them
Office called the quote,
$16
systematic
billion
attacks on
worth
schools,
of
unquote,
more of
with
them.
at least 21 Israeli strikes on schools, each serving as a shelter since July 4th alone. The deadly bombing of the Al-Tabayin school
We've
also
been bombing
came 2
more
days after the
schools
Biden
in the
administration
last
notified
2
Congress it's
months.
preparing to provide
For the
Israel
whole
an
really
additional
taking out
$3.5 billion
schools when the
to
people are
spend on
just
U.S.
huddling in the
military equipment.
thousands, you know?
Meanwhile, tens of thousands of
But they're like
Palestinians have been
cockroaches.
forced to flee the southern
Those
city of
Palestinians are
Khan
like
Yunis and sleep
cockroaches.
on
You
sidewalks
just
and
can't
streets
kill
after
them.
the Israeli military
You know,
ordered more
we're trying
evacuation
to, but we
orders
just
in the city
can't.
early Sunday, including in part of a previously designated so-called humanitarian zone. The latest order follows similar directives issued by the Israeli military in the eastern regions of Deir al-Balah in central Gaza and other parts of Khan Yunis Thursday.
I love the way
vast majority of Gaza's population of 2.3
names
million
sound.
people have been displaced often multiple times. Khan Yunis had
Babu.
already suffered widespread destruction during an Israeli air and ground offensive earlier
White
this year.
people are just so
From more, we go
stupid.
to
What can I
Gaza, where we're
say?
joined by Palestinian
That's why we
journalist
need the Ku
Shuhud
Klux Klan.
She
We
runs
need
a
them.
media in Gaza
We need
and
those
joins us
white
today
robes.
from outside the Al-Aqsa Hospital
You
in
know,
Deir
that's
al-Balah.
why all those
Shuhud,
ministers
thank you for
get
joining
their
us. Can you
wives
talk
to make
about the
those white
strike
shirts
on the Israeli
so
school and
white.
mosque on Saturday?
Ku
how
Klux
significant
Klan what?
this was with the killing of about 100 people.
I mean, I saw in the supermarket a new detergent called Ku Klux Klan White.
I'm devastated to talk about such topic that happened on Saturday, that we woke up in a very heartbreaking news of targeting a school, which is a shelter for almost 600 displaced people from
This
the
is
Gaza
what's
City
coming our way.
Gaza City as well. And this is school. Schools are safe areas, which is absolutely not. And
Instead of somewhere over there in the Gaza Strip, it's going to be on the Miracle Mile in Long Island, or out there in New Jersey in Red Bank. You know, it's going to be there in Hollywood. You're going to be seeing drones and F-16s and F-15s. Go watch that TV show, Man in the High Chair. Yeah.
Severely injured, like among these injuries, there are lots of amputations.
Come on, some thumbs up.
The attack happened.
This is entertainment. Hey, and remember, don't believe a word I said. This is all for your giggles and laughs. This is supposed to make you laugh.
People decided to stay at the mosque to recite Quran, and the massacre happened.
Yeah, they killed all those people in that school while they were praying.
Israel is saying there was some kind of Hamas headquarters, yet Euromed Human Rights Monitor said Sunday a list provided by the Israeli army of alleged targets at the school include individuals who were killed in previous attacks and civilians who opposed Hamas.
Look, like each severe attack, we used to hear that same narrative from the Israeli side, that this massive attack that left lots of injuries and casualties, that there is always something that is saying that Hamas is behind all of these. But basically, when it comes to the footage, and when you look deeper at the news and the names, you see just innocent people, mostly kids and women as well. So let me say, it's just normal. We are getting used to such speech from the Israeli side, that wherever attacks happen, there is that excuse that there is Hamas beyond this. But you know that Gaza is full of it's overcrowded with people. Like it's almost like 200 population, and for sure those people, they are innocent. They are holding hopes like to live in peace, and nobody wished for a word, you know. And if you are switching for the southern part of the Gaza Strip, in the past 2 weeks, the Israeli army issued multiple evacuation orders for the Rafah area, Khan Yunis area, the Balah area, and also Nusayrat. Even though the north, like lots of evacuation orders, like every day that happens. Like you imagine, like you are suffering to find a spot to go to set up your makeshift tent and find the access for water, for bathrooms, and for essentials, and then eventually it ends up with immediate orders of evacuation. And the only thing that you can do at such a moment is just to flee and run for your safety, along with your family members, leaving behind the essentials that instantly with time and money.
It's coming home. You know, it's coming home.
There are people that I know that have been displaced.
It's not going to be,
no.
Can you respond to the latest
terrorists,
news of the possibility
cowheads doing it? No,
of
it's going to be
talks being renewed?
tobacco
Hamas
chewing.
said they want to abide by
I was having lunch at a place.
ceasefire proposal.
This guy came in and he was moving the dishes, and I thought he worked there. I said, "Here, let me help you." No, I just no. I said, "Oh, well, here, I just cleaned up my spot. Why don't you sit with me?" So we sat down, and he was a Vietnam vet, and he flew helicopters, and he stayed in the Air Force, Air Force or Army helicopter, whoever was flying those helicopters. And he stayed in the military, and they did things that he was not all there. And he said, I joined the militia, and I explained to him what the Second Amendment was. And he was, yeah, right, that, yeah. And he just, he said, we're going to have civil war. And I said, no, I don't think so. What do you mean? I said, yeah, I know, I'm full agreement with you. And Donald Trump will win. Yeah, but we're still going to have a civil war. Get rid of all those people. We have to get them. He's not like you and me. We got to go.
Associated's
I
Press
said,
on it.
buddy,
Israel
I don't
bombed the
think that's
home
going
of
to
the
happen. What do you
Palestine
mean?
TV journalist Tamim
I said,
Ahmar in
because
Khan Yunis on
most
Friday,
people
killing him along with
are
his wife and
lazy.
2 of their children.
Yeah, they're
A
totally
simple
lazy.
airstrike
Everyone I work with is
on the
lazy,
TV journalist
lazy,
Abdullah
lazy. They don't know how to
al-Sisi
work.
killed him and 2 of his
And so
nephews.
they're
This
not going to,
follows the killing of Al
get off
Jazeera
their
Arabic journalist
TikTok.
Ismail
Yeah, what is that
Abu and his
TikTok thing?
cameraman Rami al-Haithi on July 31st. Your husband, the journalist Rushdie Siraj, was killed in an Israeli airstrike in October. You've taken over the leadership.
Yeah, the
of
Israelis are
main
going
media
after
from
that.
him.
They're going to start
Talk
doing
about
that in
the
America,
latest
going
killing of
after. But
journalists
see,
in
they don't
Gaza.
have
The
to
number
because
now
they
at this
bought
point
all
well
of
over
the
100
media
journalists
here
killed.
in America. They own it, so they don't have to kill them.
According to the Ministry of Health, like almost
And I'm up
100,
for
plus
sale.
160
I'm
journalists
going
were
down
killed. Most of them, they
to
were
check out that lottery
directly
thing.
attacked by
And
the
if
Israeli
I
army.
win
And
that
it's
million
not
or
Jamie, I'm saying
500
this in
million,
a very honest word that
you
I
won't hear
prefer
a
whenever
word
I go
from
for
me
filming
ever
content, I prefer
again.
not
I'm
to
going to
read
buy
the
my own
press
island out there in
first,
Tahiti,
because
along with
I
Mr.
started to
Branson
believe that this
and
space is a threat, and we are targeting
and
because
Mr.
of it. It's
Lolita,
never protecting
and it
us.
should be
It's
fun,
not only
right?
it's the same feelings that we all journalists are sharing.
Put
with
a big bubble.
we
You know,
tired of being
Elon was telling
followed
big
and being
bubbles over these
attacked,
islands,
and
so
what
no
we are
matter what
doing
the
is just
environment
screening all
does,
the massacres on the
we'll
screen,
still have
like
it.
in
It'll be
front
nice.
of the media, like, and
Kind of
somehow
like that
I
movie.
feel we
Um,
are in need for the access of
what
foreigner
was that movie
journalists to
called?
come in and join us during these coverage. Maybe they have some
It was
words that
with
left that we did not say
James
so far,
Bond.
and it's good to hear
It was a
the
dystopian
reality
in the
from
future
other
movie,
mouths,
and
because
it was probably made in the 70s.
like everything has been featured and have
Zardos.
been slaughtered on the
Zardos.
screen,
Go
like,
watch that movie,
like
kids.
since almost
That's where we're
the last
heading.
10 months so far, and nothing's happening on the ground. It's just all about following and attacking
The
more and
opening
more
scene is
journalists.
like The Walking
And
Dead,
can
right?
say that
All
it's
these
pressure
people.
on us, especially
And
when
this
it
is one
comes to
guy who's
family
like,
and
not,
friends and
they
even
didn't bite him
people
yet,
outside in the
but
streets.
he's like
We are
totally
somehow feeling that we
he's
are
like
threatened
gone,
to
he's
have
lost.
walking
And
by, like, because
he's
we are
in a
calling
suit
camera
that's
or
totally
we
ripped
dress
up and
this,
dirty,
and it's
and
never
he's got his briefcase
never
with him. He
a
goes, excuse me, I have to get to work.
feeling that
It's on his head
especially at
explodes
just finding a genocide.
because
I think there is
the
a need
berserkers
to
have,
make more pressure
keeping
in the
them
media
down
to have
and
access to
getting
further
the people to
journalists to come
grow
in
the
and
grain
to
and the
report
vegetables so
happenings and
the rich
help us
people
in
can have
spreading the
them.
word.
When the big head shows up and they put
Thank
all
you for
the
being with us,
offerings into the
independent
big
journalist
head
and producer
and
in
it takes
Gaza.
off.
Again, her husband Rushdie Siraj was killed
Go
in
watch
Israeli
that movie.
airstrike in
Zardos.
October. She now runs his media outlet, Ein Media. Coming up, Inside Project 2025 secret training videos.
Here we go. This guy got arrested for playing this in front of City Court, in which he was just making a police speech. He was no rioting, no signs. He was just playing music. And they want to send him to jail for 7 years. And he was doing it in a common space that the City Court building has. You can go and play music and do stuff. But he made an announcement before he started playing. It's really American genocide.
Prelude to Suite 5, performed by Yo-Yo Ma. And New York City professional cellist John Mark Rosendahl is facing up to 7 years for playing a piece from Bach's Suite for Cello outside the headquarters of Citibank during a climate protest. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. It's War, Peace, and the Presidency.
They want to make it a 20 years in jail
known as
for
Project
doing any public
Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's trying to downplay his connection to the plan. And last week, Kevin Roberts, head of the influential right-wing Heritage Foundation, postponed the release of his Project 2025 book until after the November election.
I wonder why.
Forward is written by Trump's vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance.
I wonder
Trump's
how.
campaign insists it has no connection to the right-wing blueprint for immigration, almost 1,000 pages long.
I believe him. Donnie never lies.
Rights, climate policy, and more. That many of the key figures working for Project 2025 are former top Trump administration officials. Some
I
of
wonder
them
how that
featured in
happened.
newly released videos that were created for Project 2025's Presidential Administration Academy. In a major new development, the independent news outlets Republica and Documented have now published dozens of these videos, some of which will feature today. In this clip, Trump's former deputy chief of staff at USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, Bethany Kozma, discusses climate change.
Climate change, allegedly, is everywhere. And if the American people elect a conservative president, his administration will have to eradicate climate change references from absolutely everywhere. And according to our intelligence community, the number one threat facing our country today is, drumroll, climate change. Not Russia, not China, not AI, climate change. This shows how the federal government is all in on this issue. And climate change activists wield a lot of power. This is an issue to pay attention to as it has infiltrated every part of the federal government. Now, when I think of climate change, I immediately think of population control, don't you? I think about the people who don't want to have the impact on the environment. Perhaps not everyone will make that connection, but after spending time
I did. Yeah, I'm chewing tobacco out here.
This is part of their ultimate goal, to control people. That's conservative activist.
Like I haven't been doing that for the rest of eternity.
Project 2025 training video. From where we go to Washington, D.C., where we're joined by Andy Kroll, investigative reporter for ProPublica, whose new expose is headlined Inside Project 2025 Secret Training Videos. ProPublica has posted the full 23 videos, totaling more than 14 hours of content on its website. Andy, welcome back to Democracy Now! Explain how you got the videos and their significance as we go through some of them.
I want to know.
Yeah, the videos come from the Presidential Administration Academy, which is one of the main pillars of Project 2025. We've heard a lot about, you've talked about on this show, the extreme policy proposals that Project 2025 put out in its 900-page mandate for leadership document. What's gotten less attention, but is no less important to Project 2025's long-term goal here, is to train thousands of future political appointees so that if a conservative president, which of course now means if Donald Trump, a conservative candidate, wins in November and we have a Republican president, that there will be a bench of thousands of vetted and trained appointees who can go into the government and fill openings in that government so that, as Project 2025 itself says on its website, that conservative administration can be ready from quote-unquote day one. Now, these videos were provided to us by a source who had access to them. I won't get into the sourcing on it, but with any kind of situation like this, the key things for us at ProPublica are these videos real? Are they authentic? And are they newsworthy? Obviously, the substance is newsworthy. In our reporting process, we talk to people who are in the videos. We verified them, authenticated them, and fact-checked them ourselves. And now we've published on them. And as you helpfully pointed out, also published all of these 23 videos, totaling more than 14 hours, on our website. Anyone watching today can go and watch them now.
Andy, if you can just give us some background again on Project 2025, because of course, President Trump has disavowed this, but meanwhile, the director of Project 2025, Paul Dans, a former top advisor,
he's been ordained by God,
has been forced to step down.
Savior.
And of course, that book,
like a God.
Which is headed by the head of Heritage Foundation, which is behind this blueprint, is now, they are putting off the publication of this with the forward by none other than Trump's vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance.
The Trump campaign has clearly come to the realization that Project 2025 and the policies that it lays out are extremely unpopular.
Very
and it's
unpopular.
not really surprising to understand why. Just a few of those
I like
policies
how they want you to dress. You know, I like that fascist look.
Further restricting
you can actually have these little bibby things when your tobacco jewels down there. I like it.
Reclassifying tens of thousands of career government employees so that they can be more easily fired,
that was
and then replaced by more loyal, vetted political appointees chosen by the next conservative president, which again in this case would potentially be Donald Trump. So there's a reason the Trump campaign is distancing itself from those unpopular policies. It is hurting their campaign. However, as you pointed out, and as we report in our story, the number of connections between Trump's political operation and his administration, 18 to 21, and Project 2025 are many. As we write in the story, of the 36 different speakers in these videos, 29 of them have a connection to Mr. Trump. They worked in his administration across the government, the White House, National Security Council, a number of departments, including Justice, Interior, Health and Human Services, Office of Management and Budget.
They want to get rid of all of these offices. None of them.
Ran his 2016-17 transition team that led him into the first presidency. And lastly, I would point out the Trump re-election campaign spokeswoman who sent us a comment reiterating in their view that there's no connection between 2025 and the Trump campaign. She herself, Carolyn Levitt, actually appears in the videos that we posted on our site. So it's really impossible to say that there is some bright line here between Trump's political campaign, his team, and this Project 2025 effort.
Andy Kroll, I want to play a series of clips that you have just released. This is another Project 2025 training video featuring Katie Sullivan, who is acting Assistant Attorney General, Department of Justice under Trump. In this clip, Sullivan says the next conservative administration will need to eradicate all equity plans.
I think you can expect that equity and all of the equity executive orders under Biden will be repealed early in the next administration. This is going to require a very detailed plan to execute the eradication of the dictates in the equity orders. For instance, there's a gender advisor position created by one of these executive orders. The position has to be eradicated, as well as all the task forces, the removal of all the equity plans from all the websites, and a complete rework of the language in
only white people get equity.
Policy documents.
Only white, and only white men.
And this
only
is
white men.
Project 2025
yes, I'm a woman, and I'm telling you this. I should be talking for my own gender, but I'm not. Only white men are God approved.
When they do.
If the next Republican president does not execute a dramatic course correction, there may never be another chance.
Oh my God!
You're on board with helping implement a dramatic course correction because you're afraid it'll damage your future employment prospects. It'll harm you socially. Look, I get it. That's a real danger. It's a real thing.
It's a real danger.
Do us all a favor and sit
hey
this
kids,
one out.
the three of you there. How about 3 more thumbs up? Come on, you can do it. I know you can do it.
It features
and go tell your friends to watch this video. This should make you laugh. This is a funny one.
Now, in terms of a tip, survival tip, do not let career bureaucrats hinder you from advancing the president's agenda. Keep in mind, you're coming into a place, Washington, D.C., that does not share your conservative values. They're even
bang, bang, bang.
Because you're here to do something that's not in their interest. They're not going to be your friend, and they're not going to help you.
Bing, bang, boom, boom, bang, bang.
You're here to cut
bang, bang.
You're here to cut spending. You're here to cut regulations. You're here to stop the waste, fraud, and abuse that's going on. A lot of careers have been made from that.
Bang.
A lot of money has been made from that. Fiefdoms have been built.
Let's go. French Revolution. Yo.
It's an entire industry.
We tried January 6th. We didn't try hard enough. French Revolution. Let's bring out that guillotine. Forget hanging them.
And finally, I want to turn to a Project 2025 training video featuring Alexei.
And I'm from Harvard.
Former Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security. In this video, he encourages future appointees to avoid mainstream news outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post. Instead, take their message to conservative media.
The American people who vote for a conservative presidential administration, they're not reading the New York Times. They're not reading the Washington Post. Actually, to the contrary. If those outlets publish something, they're going to assume it's false. So the only way to reach them with any voice of credibility is through working with conservative media outlets.
So Andy Kroll, investigative reporter for ProPublica, if you can respond, this is just an excerpt of the videos that you have released inside Project 2025's secret training videos.
Come on, you three. Some thumbs up. Come on, I know. You got fingers. You got this, or if you don't, you're paraplegic. You can use your eyeballs on the cursor.
Down to the choice of words in these different clips. We hear the word eradicate a lot, and then we hear eradicate in the context of
bang, bang, bang.
The word
boom,
climate
boom,
change
bang,
from
bang,
any
boom,
federal
bang,
government
bing,
document
bing,
that a future
bing.
appointee sees. Obviously, that would not move the country in the right direction in terms of combating this existential threat that we face with climate change. You hear eradicate in terms of getting rid of policies that are responding to gender inequality, racial inequality, those executive actions that Katie Sullivan in the second clip discussed. If those are things responding to the abuses surfaced by the Me Too movement, or the abuses surfaced, the injustices surfaced in 2020 during the racial uprisings then as well. Getting rid of all of those. And then you have, with this last clip, the former DHS press secretary, you have someone basically saying, when you get into government, just talk to conservative media. Shut out everybody else. I mean, mainstream media, but just about everyone else as well. Only talk to the people who you agree with, who like you. The audiences served by those conservative outlets are the only ones that matter. That's not what a presidential administration, Democratic or Republican, is supposed to do, just to serve the whole country. But clearly that is not the advice that they're getting in these clips.
It's very interesting that they advise the right-wing administration not to leave a paper trail, yet they have left quite a video trail. As we wrap up, Andy, the most important takeaways at this point.
The most important takeaways, I think, for people watching are, the first time that Trump ran and then, surprisingly too, many got elected, his operation was very unprepared. They did not have a bench of people ready. There was chaos, there was confusion. And that set
he
back that
didn't think he was
administration
going to
for
win.
perhaps months, maybe even a year or two into the Trump first administration. If he is elected again, that will not be the case. So these videos have a lot of extreme content in them, a lot of eyebrow-raising advice, for instance, like don't leave a paper trail, which you just referenced. But really what they are trying to do is prepare these thousands or tens of thousands of people to get in government and enact a pretty conservative, a right-wing agenda and be prepared and trained to do it from the moment that administration starts. That is different from before. And the voting public needs to understand that when they think about these two candidates, when they think about what that Trump agenda would be if he gets elected in November and takes office in January.
Andy Kroll, I want to thank you so much for being with us, investigative reporter for ProPublica. His new expose titled Inside Project 2025 Secret Training Videos. ProPublica has posted the...
So that was radio days, you know. I listened to the radio, TV, have no internet, have no nothing. And, you know, I've had a really blessed life. And I've done all kinds of things. I'm not stuck to anything, but pretty much everything I've done, I've been successful to the point I wanted to be successful, right? Because, like, a good example is my all my art buddies, right? All the guys who stuck at it, right? Well, you know, they became famous, well-to-do. Well, they are. That's all they did. They never traveled, never did this. And then when they do travel, my friends who are artists who do travel, they only travel to go to an event or a piece or this or that. They don't go there and stay there and enjoy what it is. They always take a break. Well, I'll give you a and I can't talk to them right now. 3 seconds. I just want to say, no, it's fine. So I had a life that about 40 different, I had about 40 different lives in this. And what I really think it is my preparation for my next life. You know, so I did die, right? Yeah, you know, I had almost 500 pounds. You know, I had total renal failure. You know, and I, you know, had my life examination, and it was a big party. And it was in the basement of Hitler's rifle shop. That was the Catholic school I went to and got murdered in when I was 7. Holy Redeemer School, and the Ku Klux Klan tried to burn it down. I mean, I almost didn't go to that school because they burnt it down. Part of it that I was going to go to, so I got stuck into another class with you know, I was a little peewee of a guy, and I was with like, you know, second, third, fourth graders, in a class of about 60, and there was Sister Holy Nazi Holy Roller Skate, and she talk like, yeah, I'm German. I'm Joel. You know what I say? Oh, sorry. I didn't mean that. Jesus is love. Jesus is love. I mean, Jesus is love. Jesus is Fiora. So you kind of knew something was up with this girl. And we were having a duck and cover drill. We were supposed to get underneath our desks and say the rosary bead. And I was just sitting in my seat. And she goes, "Get under your seat, Emma." I said, "Sister, you know, see out that window? There's the Empire State Building over there, and that's ground zero, you know." And so Russia's going to drop its biggest hydrogen bomb right on top of that, and we will be dust. You know, we won't even see the flash, and we will be burnt. You know, first thing it will be feeling. You know, the flash will be there, right? And if we're looking at it, we're not going to see anything else. If we're looking away, we're just going to see our basic shadow on the wall, and then the shadow is going to start smoking because we're on fire, and then the concussion wave will hit us, and that's it. And she just grabbed me by the neck, put me against the wall, and boom, hit me with a cinder block, and then hit me again. But the first one, I was gone. And about 2 weeks later, I woke up with a cast on my head. Couldn't see anything. I had 2 straws up my nose and 1 straw in, let's see, this ear, right? And I heard these 2 nuns. Yes, when he's, you know, his brain stops being like Jello, they're going to give him a frontal lobotomy. I'm going, you know, and I couldn't talk either. My jaw, she had broken my jaw, crushed my larynx, you know, basically broke the orbit in this height and squished my head. and basically made me deaf in that ear. Right. So, and they're going to give me a frontal lobotomy first thing once they take the cast off my head. So I was just going, and the basic um, thing that occurred was the door crashes open. My Aunt Gracie comes in. This man goes over to her, and and my Aunt Gracie had done this twice, and she's with Doctor Black, and Doctor Black's chauffeur, who is a New York City um, detective. And when he's not working as a New York City detective, he's Doctor Black's basic security slash. Anyway, so I didn't know what was going on. I got picked up. And basically, I'm in a car and I'm put in a lap of my godfather, Cardinal Cushing. And so where my nose was, they had it cleared so I could breathe. So I'm like this, and I feel teardrops kind of like going down my throat. And he says, "How can you always get in such trouble? You're so sweet. How can you get in such trouble?" And that's because I talk truth to power. Always have, always will. And I kind of, after that experience, and I was sent off to the Marinols where they stuck me back together. And that's where I learned Greek and Latin and geometry and algebra and a lot of other things. I took the Vivian something speed reading course and the memory course. So anyway, I was well programmed, well trained, and I could have been a board, the next board. So anyway, but I wasn't. I was this, and I've always done this, and I leaned more into, as my mother would always say to me, Albert, you get more flies with honey than with vinegar. So I was always a sweet, nice guy. Always, even when people were being nasty, I would just say, and kind of move them over to where I would say a few things, and they were like, they would lose their shit. People who need power will do anything for it, right? So I've learned there's a certain level you can go. Right after that, you can what you have to be is Gandhi. So, and I'm not quite there yet, but I'm working on it. That's why I'm here. I'm mostly Gandhi here. I'm not doing the heavy lifting stuff I did in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early O's, right? And so it's what it is, and I'm happy about it because, like today, look, look at. So this is where I live, right? And you haven't heard any real traffic or airplanes or nothing, right? So that's what I live in. All you really hear is birds. So that's where I live, and I go out and I interact with the rest of the humans, and I'm nice and always there for them, and whenever I can do some heavy lifting, I do, but I don't have to. And I don't really need. I'm writing my novels. I'm writing my 18 novels. I've gotten 8 kind of done. I've you know outlined and started the other 8, the last 2, which is going to have to tie everything together. Not to say. So anybody wants to read any of my stuff, get a hold of me at the dudewake42 at Gmail. Dudewake42 at Gmail. Anybody wants to drop something in my PayPal? I haven't really checked it in months because no one's put anything in it in a year at least. And that's the dudewake42 at Gmail. And every time I try to go on my PayPal, they said, well, you need to change your blah blah blah, and you need to do this, and you need to buy a new download this, and and so I don't do that. And what I do is go visit my internet guru, and they kind of just hit a few buttons, and then everything's fine. So, but that means I have to drive 40 miles. So anyway, why don't you drop something in the old PayPal, and when I'm in that neighborhood, we'll see if it dropped in. Otherwise, PayPal will be making interest on it. Praise Jesus. Get a hold of me. So if you got Gmail, you can get a hold of me. If you got whoever's your server, doesn't really matter. It's just a little more complicated for me. But if you have Gmail, just drop a little note. Hey, Al, let me read some of your stuff, and I can send it to you like no problem. If you are like on YooHoo or Yo-Yo or Blogmaster or whatever, um, it's a little more difficult for me, but I can still do it. Challenge is always good for me. The major thing about me is I'm kind of a lazy slug. I get involved in stuff, and I do whatever I do my best. So when back in the day when I was young and I could do a lot of stuff, I would do a lot of stuff, and it was no big deal. It was not like a job. It wasn't like my career, because everybody I was working for, when I was involved in social activism, that was their job, that was their career, that's who they were. Me, no, not, why I was successful is that it wasn't, I was the dude in discos. I was um, the art party ringleader in Soho and Tribeca in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. So I was doing a lot of different stuff. I was like the guru dude in the New York City esoteric world. Because I was at the UN, which was and the CFR, which is totally um, occult. All our government is occult. Our founding fathers were all Masons. So no one really is looking at what's going on. Nothing is as it seems to be, right? So you want to know more stuff? Get a hold of me at dudewake42 at gmail, right? So I love you guys. I'm getting down on the old battery. What time? Let's see how much do I got left? Yeah, it's like always good not to let it get in the red zone. So any questions? I'm open for questions. I'm going to leave in a few minutes unless you guys start. Hey, come on, a couple of more thumbs up. Subscribe, hit that bell, get some people to jump in here. Let's get me at the 75K subscriber level in you know by the end of the month. How about that? That's workable. I mean, there's only 400 now, but you, you can do it. Yes, you can. Right. That was from the Water Boy, and that was one of his Saturday Night Live buddies, the little guy. And the little guy did a great movie where he you know was like a Chinese prodigy martial artist, but he's like looks like a nice Jewish boy from Long Island, and he's in Sing Sing, and there's all these you know white power guys and black guys, and he's this little guy, right? And so he goes, his first day, this old guy comes up to him and goes, he's looking for a friend. He goes, listen, buddy, just lay low. I got here when I was your age, and look at me now. He said, how old are you now? Because he looks like he's like 9,000 years old. He goes, I'm only 26. He's been worrying a bit. And so the guy goes, not a problem. And this guy has a book with him, right? A kind of big, like a big picture book, right? Or something substantial. And he goes, hey, so who is the craziest batshit person you want to stay away from that everyone's scared of? And he goes, "That's Big Willie," and that's like a black guy who's a transgendered black guy, Ku Klux Klan reptile, right? So, and he goes, "Let me borrow that book for a second." And so Big Willie has got this other guy by the throat, and he goes, "I want you to suck my dick right now." And they're like out there in the yard, right? And so he's like got the guy, and he's pushing, and and the little guy, the Saturday Night Live guy, taps him on the shoulder and goes, "Excuse me," and he makes this comment about him being a black transgendered um, white powered reptile. And the guy, "Who are you? What are you?" And he drops the poor guy who was just about to be flayed onto the ground, and he's trying to crawl away. And so this, other, the Saturday Night Light guy says a few things to him, and then the guy gets really angry. And the guy, before the big guy can grab him, the little guy just walks away, and not runs away, just walks away, and he keeps his back to him, right? And so the big guy, boom, 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 right, is about to like clobber him, and the little guy, the guy is just like he's just at the right points where he's like totally exposed. His head is right at the perfect place, and the little guy turns around with a book and just whacks him upside the head, and his head like, and then he kicks him in the nuts, and then he does some kung fu things that, and he's gone. He is gone. Not dead, just he's not getting up. And so the everyone's like cheering, right? And so the black guy, the Ku Klux Klan guys, white power, "Hey, come over here, be part of us." And then the black guys, like, "You go over there. That's it for you. You can take care of him. You blindsided him. He didn't expect that, but we know what you can do now. We're gonna." And so he says, "Really?" And so he goes over to the Ku Klux Klan guy, and the head Ku Klux Klan guy, he just kind of, jumps up in the air and spins around a few times and whacks him in the side of the head with his foot, and then comes down, and the guy's like, "Oh," and then he kicks him in the balls, and he falls over, and then a bunch of the big fat white guys go after him, and he boom, 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 knocks him down. And the black guys are all cheering, "Yeah, he's our guy, he's our guy." And he goes over there and he talks to the big, and the black goes, "So you're now my bitch. You're gonna be you're number two." And he goes, "No, you're number two. You're the color." And the guy goes, "What?" And he takes out all of the black guys because the big guy, chief in charge, he's a bully, so he doesn't go toe to toe with this guy. He sends in other people with weapons and guns, and they really got that in jails. Mm. So that was you might find that on YouTube. Anyway, are we in the red line yet? No one said anything. Let's see. No, it's still Fish. Hey, Fish. See you later. Yep, yep, yep. Fishy, I haven't. And folks who have your phone numbers, I haven't really called you because of for some reason I've had very, very, very infrequent phone signals, but I still have it. And when I leave, I make most of my calls when I get into town where I have strong signal, not God given signal, miracle signal, and I haven't had the cash to put gas in this car. I have enough to get to my doctor's appointment tomorrow. I'm gonna hit my doctor up. Hey doc, why don't you give me $20 so I can put some gas in my car? She's gone for that once in a while. So anyway, that's about it. Unless some other you guys have some really like, go look at yesterday's show. The dialogue of the chat was quite interesting, and I would love to see more of that. In the beginning, we had a good deal of that. Yes, we had a bunch of, what do you call it, trolls, but those guys weren't bad. Guys, girls, whatever gender they were, they turned out to be the best members of the cadre. And so I look forward to hearing from you. I'll catch you later. Later.